But I didn't realise quite how much fruit you have got to stuff into a beer to make it fruity. Yeah, I remember the beer that we made had like 1.2 tons of mango puree in it that was added by hand. And on that day, I was like, well, that's how much mango you need to shove in a beer. Like, wow.
Hello and welcome to We Are Beer People, a podcast all about the many different people who help us enjoy beer. I'm your host, Rob Cadwell, and I reckon if you're listening to this, then there's a good chance that you are one of the beer people too. You might be involved in the world of beer, you may want to find out more about the industry, or perhaps you simply enjoy drinking the stuff. So join me now as I have a chat with one of the beer people. Today we're in Staines and we're chatting with Hayley Pearce, shift brewer at Siren Craft Brew. And this is part 2 of a 2-part episode. In the first part we focused mainly on Fuller's and the earlier part of Hayley's career, whilst this second part picks up when Hayley joined Siren Craft Brew. So if you're joining in the second part and haven't yet listened to the first part, I'd recommend starting with that. But for now, join us as we have a chat with one of the beer people. So you went from then the pilot kit at Fuller's and you went to Siren. What was the reason then for heading over to Siren?
I was really enjoying running the pilot kit. I got to do loads of collaborations. It was really sort of inventive, creative, hands-on, all the things I really wanted, and I was learning so much. It was the first time that I'd really been able to make recipes for myself, that kind of thing. But when Asahi bought Fuller's, although they didn't want to change Fuller's in itself, the visions for the pilot brewery weren't the same as Fuller's. So until they could figure out what exactly they wanted to do with the pilot brewery, they essentially closed it. So that meant I was a shift brewer again. And when you go from like running your own little brewery and having all of this freedom, even with the stresses that came with it, to going back to essentially sort of making the same beers over and over and over, it just started to feel like I wasn't learning. And I don't like feeling like that. I'm always inspired by what can I learn next? What's around the corner? What's the new technique that somebody can show me? Mm-hmm. So to do the same thing day in, day out, although I love Fuller's and I still do. I absolutely love that brewery. The job itself wasn't making me grow as a person. So I sort of thought, okay, I think I'm ready for a move. I want it to be more like being in the pilot brewery, but I'd also like to be in a team, because as much as I enjoyed the pilot brewery, when I was doing collaborations and it was like there was a little team of us, I enjoyed that the most. So I looked around for ages because I wasn't going to leave Fuller's for any old thing. It had to be the right thing. It had
to be worth it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Especially as by this point we'd gone into sort of COVID time.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Just to add that in as well to the mix.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to leave job security and everything that I knew for something that might be a complete mistake. So after quite a while, I saw that Siren were advertising for a shift brewer, and I hadn't ever been to Siren, but I knew quite a bit about them. So I knew Sean, the head brewer. I'd actually met him at Fuller's because we'd done the Fuller's and Friends together.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So although I wasn't paired with his brewery, a lot of the sort of people that didn't actually do the brewing were paired with other breweries. So if it was one of their brews, the brewers still brewed it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So even though it wasn't that brew, I'd still met him by going through that whole thing. So I knew that he was nice and inspirational and had a lot that he could teach me. I knew that Siren were doing a lot of new beers. So I knew that the year before I joined, they'd done like 100 new beers in a year, which for me was just completely unheard of.
Yeah, that's a rate of new beers, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, just crazy. Because at Fuller's you might do one new beer a month. It's like a monthly special, that kind of thing, and that was like big, kind of something new. So to do 2 a week was just, in my mind blowing. Like, how can they do this? How do they have so many ideas? This is not doable.
Yeah, and probably the range of beers that Siren are working with is much bigger than a traditional family brewer's range of recipes.
Exactly, yeah. Although at that point I hadn't been to see it, I'd read things about bits of kit that they had. People had mentioned things like the Spinbot. I was like, what is this Spinbot thing? And the other thing for me was, in COVID times, breweries were going under, but they weren't. They were doing well. So I was thinking, well, that takes something to be not a massive brewery, medium, and to not be suffering, to be somehow making their way through it and making the best of it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. And I applied for the job, but sort of thought I probably wouldn't get it, because I think in my mind I didn't know the experience of brewers within the area, who would apply. But I think I just assumed that because I only had like the one brewery's worth of experience, that other people would have loads of different stuff, and so they would pick those people.
It's funny how our brains do that, isn't it? You can be like super qualified and like have all this really relevant experience, but your brain goes, oh no, it won't be you.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I was like thinking they probably won't. There'll be probably a good few people that have got loads of experience from loads of different breweries. But when they interviewed me, I remember after the interview thinking, wait, hang on, I've barely answered any questions about myself. This was more like some sort of Fuller's fact-finding mission. Like, it was really weird. They were so keen to find out, and what do you do, like, day to day? And what's it like? And all of, and what's the brew like? And And so I sort of got to the end of the interview thinking, wait, I've not answered any of the, what are your strengths? Yeah. I've not answered any of those. They haven't asked me anything. They've just asked me all about what I do. But then I realised, actually, if you really are interested in, is somebody going to be able to pick this job up and do it, then of course they ask you about what you actually do day to day, what your experience really is. Not, if you could be an animal, what would you be? That doesn't actually help anyone, Why do interviewers even ask that question? Luckily got the job, and it wasn't long till I started. And but it was just totally different. The feel of the place. So, Fuller's is, I think a lot of people at Fuller's, you've probably heard this before, you have that feeling of like you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You heard that before? Yeah. It really feels that way. Like, as though somehow you can't do anything wrong because you're already at the top of a mountain where everything's awesome. Somehow you haven't really had to try very hard. Somebody has thrust you up to the top, and you're just like doing as you're told, and it does the perfect job every time. To then be thrust into this completely different environment where the person that's been there the longest had only been there 7 years. So I'd been a brewer for like longer than Siren had existed. So I was like...
Yeah, that says it all.
Everyone was sort of so relatively new to it, to Siren anyway. Obviously, they had their backstories and previous roles and stuff. but it was so refreshing. There was nobody. Like, it was weird because at Fuller's I was one of the youngest, even when I left, and when I joined Siren, I was one of the oldest. So that was like a sudden like, whoa. It's like young people. Crazy. Yeah. And not like just a bit younger, like 10 years younger. So I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. Like, I've actually got knowledge and experience I can pass to other people rather than just constantly trying to, soak stuff up. So that was really nice. But yeah, the atmosphere, like there was music on, like I went in and the music was blasting through the brewery and I was like, whoa, how can you even hear each other? This is crazy. But it just gives that atmosphere of like everyone's friendly and chatting and having a laugh. And
more of a party, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is. And it's like you're just hanging out with your mates and, you just happen to make beer on the side.
Yeah.
But having a laugh the whole time.
That's cool. Who's deciding the playlist for that?
Oh, so this is the thing. Whoever is on the brew deck gets to choose what's on the sound system.
So they're the DJ.
Yeah, exactly. And we all have completely different tastes. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that everybody has in common is that when I'm on the brew deck, they're like, oh no, oh, it's her again. Oh, she's got that horrible music. Because I have the worst taste.
What are you famous for then?
Basically just like 90s cheesy pop.
It's fine.
Yeah, like I love it. I love the music that I can just sing along to without having to think about it. Because it's almost rhythmic with the brewing.
Yeah.
Once you're used to the brewing and you've got the music on that your brain just naturally sings to, you can just sort of do both. Whereas if somebody else's music's on while I'm trying to do something, I find it quite jarring.
Yeah.
You kind of find yourself thinking, what was that lyric? What did she just say? Or whatever. So, yeah, but everyone's different. You'd have anything from like my cheesy rubbish to like metal, throat music. But I mean, I had no idea that was even a thing. Yeah, but I just came into the brewery one day and there's just all these like, what is this?
Machine needs oiling.
Yeah. So there's that. I can't even remember what the other music is called. Sometimes I just don't class it as music. It just sounds like shouting or something to me. I don't know what it is.
Oh, fair enough.
But yeah, it's whoever is on the brew deck.
That's right. It's not like picked on if you bring a stout, you're doing some darker music.
No. No.
Sessions or.
No, but I do have a belief that it's really important, like what music you're playing when you're brewing. It wasn't me that came up with this. One of my favourite brewers told me once that it's really, really important that you play the right music to the beer because that's what will make the beer happy and it will brew correctly if you play it the right music. So, yeah, I mean, I can't be sure that the beer likes 90s cheesy pop, but it comes out right. So,
I think that's
maybe it does.
I think that's it. It makes you happy.
Yeah.
So you make better beer.
Yeah.
Also, King Charles, as he now is, he was talking to plants to make them healthier and happier and everything like that.
That's
But I think there's something in there.
Yeah.
I think it just boosts the morale of everyone brewing, doesn't it? Depending on whose music it is.
Yeah. And your singing voice.
Yeah. You have to record that on the brew sheet, though, of what track was playing.
Being played.
See if that had any effect on the outcome.
I've never actually thought of doing that. Maybe I will. See if it changes the beers.
What were the differences that you saw between Fuller's and Siren? I'm sure there are many, but what were the key ones that stuck out for you?
I guess obviously there's the things like size and stuff like that, but there was just mentality differences that I wasn't expecting. I just sort of thought all breweries would run the same, like to time and strictly, and that sort of thing. And I remember on my first day, obviously being struck by the music first and thinking, okay, that's not quite the same. But also, I remember at one point, Sean was showing me like how the day was run and things, and one of the brewers, he was in the office, but he came like running out from the office, and he was just like shouting at the top of his voice. I couldn't even make out what he was saying, and both me and Sean were thinking, oh my god, something's like gone terribly wrong. And he ran over to the brew deck, and I'm thinking, what is he telling this brewer? It must be that, you know, something's going wrong and he has to stop or something. And Sean was saying like, oh, what's wrong? Like, why are you shouting? And he's like, oh no, nothing's wrong. I'm like, okay, well, what are you shouting about? What's going on? And he's like, oh, the sandwich man's here. I don't want him to miss the sandwich man. So it was just like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was a totally different way of working. And yeah. And like they have a WhatsApp group that's, you know, like it'll come up in your WhatsApp group, sandwich man, like, you know, and stuff like that.
Everyone shouting.
Yeah. Or like when the ice cream man comes or something, it's like ice cream man and, you know, stuff like that.
All the work stops.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. The atmosphere is different. The way that the beer is thought about is different because you haven't got fixed ways of doing stuff. It's a constant learning cycle for all of us. And it might be that we are learning from Sean, or some of the brewers are learning from other brewers, depending on what experience we've got, or we're collaborating and we're learning from that brewery, or somebody somewhere in the world's come up with a new technique and they've done a podcast about it, and it's like, oh, I'll listen to this podcast and this guy's doing this, so yeah, let's try it, and you know, that kind of thing.
Cool, yeah. There's a bit more innovation sort of floating around there.
Yeah.
You're not sort of bound by being on the shoulders of giants.
Well, exactly, yeah. There isn't as much expectation that all your beers should be the same. It's actually more of an expectation that all beers should be different, but somehow irony.
Yeah,
but
and
you know,
commercial. You've still got to be able to sell the beer.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you can fit it within that framework.
Yeah. So there's a lot more sort of excitement around what are the beers and what are we putting in this one and all of the different ingredients and things like that. Like, I remember the first time that I made a beer with fruit in it at Siren, and I hadn't done that at Fuller's, and I'd drunk beers with fruit in, but I didn't realise quite how much fruit you have got to stuff into a beer to make it fruity. And yeah, I was part of this day of adding all this mango to a beer, and it just was like never ending. Just this constant trail of people with like, we have like 20 kilo like bags of mango puree. And it was just constant, like
shovel it in.
Just keep going. Yeah. I remember the beer that we made had like 1.2 tons of mango puree in it that was added by hand.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And on that day, I was like, well, that's how much mango you need to shove in a beer. Like,
until then,
wow.
you don't ever know. But like,
no.
At what point did they work out it was 1.2 tons and like half of that?
Well, because they'd learned from somebody else.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. So the first time they did that beer, it was a collaboration with somebody that had done that before, and so that's where that kind of brewing is different. And you get to see the friendliness of the industry so much more because everybody just works together all of the time. Like, of course, breweries are technically competitors, but the brewers within the breweries are not. We are not competitors with each other. We are all friends, and we just like to chat about beer and make good beer and figure out how that guy did something cool. And if you do something cool, you're not like, my secret, you know.
My pressure.
Yeah. Most people are like shouting it from the rooftop, like, I've done this,
Yeah.
you know, and so you will easily sort of learn about something. And it's like that we recently brewed some of our like very first no and low alcohol beers. We'd never done that before. We didn't know what we were doing, but just like through collaboration, you learn. And like, I think it's amazing how people can sometimes spend years perfecting new techniques for stuff, but then they'll quite happily come to your brewery and go, oh, well, this is how I do it.
Yeah,
And,
these
you
are the
know,
exact steps I follow
Yeah.
and the reasons why.
Yeah.
There's no like concerns about, I'm sure there are areas they protect, but there's no concerns generally about like intellectual property.
No.
You might have it from another brewery.
No, and it's amazing. It's like people share magic tricks with you or something. Yeah.
Especially with alcohol-free beer, because
Yeah,
there's such
exactly.
an art and a science, obviously, but to making a really good one of those that you're really happy to have as part of your evening, as an alternative, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And we all know the beers you have, we won't name them, but where they don't taste like that and it's not like not a good experience.
No, exactly. Yeah. So we did our first 2 low alcohol beers through collaboration.
Is that with Mash Gang?
Yeah, with Mash Gang, exactly. Yeah. And the amount that you can learn basically in 2 days, you know, 1 day for each brew. Yeah, it was incredible. And I think the thing is, it's the passion that comes from people that have perfected these things. It just exudes out of them.
Yeah.
And you can't help but just be sort of in awe of them, just listening. Like, give me all of your knowledge. You know? Yeah. And but they don't mind at all. And I think that's one of the things I love about other brewers. Often they either don't realise quite how much knowledge they have that they can give to others, or they're just so humble that, you know, and they're just, they don't mind. They will just tell you anything. It's
a lovely place to be, I think. I might flip that around to you, though, because you must have brought some knowledge and skills and experience from Fuller's to Siren that's probably able to be put to really good use there.
Yeah. So before I joined, Siren hadn't really done many sort of more traditional styles. I'd say they were more known for their IPAs and the stouts, that kind of thing. Definitely the stouts. But when I joined, one of the first beers that I worked on and was part of the recipe on was an ESB.
Perfect.
So, so obviously I knew what I was doing. But it was of course a Siren twist. So it was a coffee ESB because they were doing a project. It was called the Barista Project, and they made several different beers to show how coffee could be used to make variety of different beers, not just stouts, for example. So going on from that. Siren then bought their own pub, so the first ever pub, and they were selling somebody else's bitter because we didn't have one. And although I can't take credit for the whole recipe, I had my involvement within the recipe for Siren's first ever bitter that then we got into the pub and now we don't have to use somebody else's.
Yeah, you've got to have a bitter haven't you? Like, people expect that.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, whenever I'm in a pub like that, if it's not sort of like here, obviously everyone would always just say, oh, can I have a Pride? Because that's the obvious beer that you would pick. A lot of people don't actually ask for the branded beer. They'll just say, can I have a bitter? And so it wouldn't, in that case, matter if you were giving them a bitter you'd had to buy or one you were brewing. So it might as well be out.
Yeah, one you've done. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. So but I actually really like our bitter. So Memento if you ever want to try it.
I hope you're enjoying our chat, and if you like what you're hearing, there are a few things you can do that really help us out and help other people find the podcast. Follow or subscribe to We Are Beer People wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review or rating. Or share the episode on your socials or even in actual real life. And if you want to stay up to date with all things We Are Beer People, you can visit our website at wearebeerpeople.co.uk, where you can sign up for a monthly newsletter. And you can follow us on social media at We Are Beer People. And if you have any questions or comments or want to hear from any beer people, then pop me a message. Now, back to the podcast. And what would, I guess, a typical days or weeks kind of brewing look like for you nowadays?
A week in brewing, so it's shifts, again, similar to Fuller's, but the shift hours are slightly different. But you've still got an early brewer and a late brewer. They just have the one mash tun and one kettle, so no party geiling or anything like that. But they have a 3-tank system, so this was another thing I had to get used to. So where Fuller's had what they call a copper whirlpool, Siren have got a kettle and a separate whirlpool. And that helps with like hop additions and stuff like that, because you can go from the kettle via a heat exchanger, cool the wort down, and then add the hops at a cooler temperature, so you get less bitterness from those hops and more aroma. And it's a really cool technique that you couldn't really do like at Fuller's, for example. So in a day, you'd start off the same in that you'd start off by mashing in. For 3 of the days, we do 3 mashes a day. And for 2 of the days, you'd either do 2 mashes or a mash and a clean.
Yep.
So the early brewer will actually mash in all 3 beers. So they'll mash in the first one, run that all the way through the kit into the FV. Meanwhile, they, halfway through that process, will have started mashing in the second brew. So they'll be looking after the first beer in the kettle, meanwhile mashing in the second beer into the mash tun. They'll move the first beer from the kettle to the whirlpool and into the FV, meanwhile moving the second beer into the kettle. Once that's in the kettle, start mashing in the third beer, and at that point, that's when the late brewer turns up. And you go, phew, and hand it all over.
Being a flight controller or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
It's like, that's parked there for now, but obviously need to bring that out.
It's a lot, especially because the kit's sort of half manual, half automated. And the brew deck itself is up some steps, and all of the pipework's underneath the deck. So when I was first learning, I couldn't get my head around where all the pipework went from all of the different tanks.
Just a jumble of spaghetti.
Yeah, just loads of pipework. I'm just sort of like, oh,
They could have made
God.
it really simple, but they've just filled it.
Yeah.
Make it really complicated.
They just made it do loop-de-loop for a laugh. Yeah.
This one just connects back to itself.
Yeah, for no reason. So so you'd be balancing all of those processes, but also doing things like cleaning the heat-ex, pitching the yeast. So if you're doing 3 different brews, the early brewer would pitch the first brew, and the late brewer would pitch the second 2 brews. But then also you've got, in between that, you've got to dig out the mash tun. So the early brewer would do 2 of the digging out the mash tun, often with the help of a brewery assistant, thankfully. Because if you've got, 1 brew boiling away in the kettle and a few other processes going on, and you've also then got to mash out, which is sort of not completely manual. There's an arm that pushes the mash out of the door, but you've still got to dig the mash sort of into the back of a skip. Okay, you can't just allow it to drop in, because it'll just drop in one pile and then overflow. And it takes about 3 skips worth to empty the mash tun. So then you've got to get on the forks and take the skip outside. And,
so you've got to be supervising it as well.
And empty it into the farmer's trailer. So there's loads of things going on. And then at the same time, you've got to be milling in the next brew. So, it's in a similar way to Fuller's, where you've got all of these things in your head at the same time. It's like that. It's just that the processes that you are involved in as a brewer are spread out more. So, at Fuller's you wouldn't be milling and pitching yeast and brewing and mashing out. You'd be concentrating on the brew. So that for me was quite like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be in all of these places all at the same time? But yeah, you get used to that. And then the late brew carries on from there. So you've got do the last brew, get that into the FV, and then do the cleans and that sort of thing. And you do it on rotation. So you would do, say, a week of early brewing, and then a week of early cellar.
Yep.
Then a week of late brewing, then a week of late cellar, and rotate.
Okay, yeah.
And so there's 4 brewers, and we all rotate around those different shifts. I remember at first it seemed like it took so long to get back to the original shift that you were on that I felt like I'd forgot what I was doing because it was kind of almost like a month in between.
You're doing totally different things in those sort of week by week, aren't you?
Yeah. So it kind of took me quite a while to understand what I was doing because I was doing something different each week. So yeah, the other side of it is doing the cellaring, which again is different because at Fuller's, the brewers did the brew and you had operators that did the cellaring.
Yep.
So it's totally different jobs. Whereas at Siren, it's all either done by a brewer or an assistant.
Yep.
So it's really, really varied, which is good because I think it stops you from getting into a rut or a routine.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned obviously like your happy places, learning and developing and all that. So if you can be doing that, I guess at a comfortable pace, so it's not like overwhelming, I think that's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, and sometimes you can get into just the right pattern of shifts where you brew the beer, then you follow it through fermentation, then you centrifuge that beer, and then you follow it through till it gets packaged, and then so it's really sort of quite
end-to-end kind of thing. Yeah,
it's nice. You sort of see it at the end, and especially if it's a beer that you're really keen to see what did it turn out like. At Siren, one of the things that's really unique about them is the way that they run the centrifuge. So where some breweries will have specifications for the centrifuge. So this beer, run it at this speed, this many hectolitres an hour, and that's just fixed. It isn't done like that at Siren. Because so many of the beers are like a one-off beer, the centrifuge is run by taste. So,
interesting, yeah.
So you start doing the transfer. First of all, do all your checks to make sure you're not getting oxygen pickup or anything like that. So make sure the beer's good, safe. And then you basically just get your pint glass out and start trying it. So you'll take with others. So you might get the head brewer, or you might get the team lead, another brewer, other people to come over, and you'll all try this beer together. And you start at, say, 50 hectolitres an hour, and then you start speeding up, and you taste and smell what the differences are in that beer as you're going quicker. So it might be that if you're doing some sort of East Coast IPA, you might get more soft, fruity notes through, and you might have a nicer mouthfeel as you speed up. So you might choose a faster speed, but it might be for a West Coast that you want that real crisp clarity, and as you speed up, it's a bit cloudy, so you go slower again. And so stuff like that. And with a stout, you might want more mouthfeel, so you might go faster.
Is that the main effector of a centrifuge, just to get rid of the particulates and stuff inside it? And that could be hops or yeast or adjuncts and stuff.
Yeah, so definitely to take out yeast, because you don't want to be getting yeast in the tins, the cans. But also, to take out particulate hops that are still floating around in there. nobody really wants to drink a tin and have like bits of hop in it. So of course you have to make sure that you're hitting specifications of clarity and things like that. You can't just like go wild and like let any old thing through. But within the boundaries of what is this style of beer and what are Siren's sort of specifications as far as like making the beer clean.
Yeah.
Within that, there's a lot of scope for well, at this speed it's softer, but at this speed it's more bitter, and at this speed I'm getting more fruit through, and at this speed I can taste more coffee, and look, all sorts of different things. Yeah.
You can tell how brewers would love it as well, because it's another dial you can sort of play around with, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Is that what the Spinbot is? Is it a centrifuge, or is that something else entirely different?
No. So the Spinbot.
Right. So this was the centrifuge.
Yeah. So that's the centrifuge. The Spinbot is a whole different beast. Yeah. He's really cool. The Spinbot gets connected to an FE, and essentially it's like a mini tank, and you can put not anything in there, but anything that you would want to impart flavour into the beer, you can put into the Spinbot. So that might be cacao nibs. It might be wooden spirals from barrels. It could be vanilla pods. All sorts of things. Chilies. You know, anything where you think that could impart a nice flavour into the beer, you could find a way to put it within the Spinbot. So it might be in like a filter bag that you put the ingredients in and then tie up at the top and tie to the inside of the Spinbot so that it's sort of hanging in the Or you might just there's sort of a false bottom in the Spinbot, so you can just put stuff on it.
Yep.
So like the spirals, you can just throw loads in.
Yep.
Yeah. And we use all sorts of different wooden spirals depending on what kind of flavour we're going for. Or, you know, it might be coffee beans, loads of stuff. Yeah. And then you connect like with hoses to the FE. The beer comes out the FE through tangential inputs to the Spinbot, essentially sort of spins around the ingredients that are in there, and then goes back out the Spinbot into the FE, and that process is on continuously. So there's a pump pumping it continuously. So the idea is that where you might say soak something within a beer or put a beer in a barrel or something like that, you're getting the same sort of effect but quickly.
Yeah.
Because
you're maximising the contacts.
That's it, contact time. Yeah. So, and the more that you're able to keep refreshing the beer that's getting into contact with all of these different ingredients, the more that you're extracting those flavours and getting that into the beer. But it's also a lot more controllable because you can continuously taste the beer.
You can never go back on that, can you? So
you can't go back.
So you never, you need to sort of do that gingerly, but that's cool.
You practice it a lot, and Sean's really good at it because he's obviously done it a lot now, and so he's teaching us, and he'll often be tasting whichever tank's connected to the Spinbot, and he'll say, "Oh, come and taste this. What do you think of this? Oh, can you taste the wood? Can you taste this?" And gets quite excited about, you know, this is right now. Yep, we call it pushing it back, push the Spinbot back. It's essentially where you push all of the beer that's currently in the Spinbot back into the FE.
Got you. Yeah.
And that's like the end of the process, and then it's take all of the ingredients out, Spinbot, clean it and stuff.
Yeah.
But I try to rescue quite a lot of it. So, especially like the wooden spirals. So these spirals might be, say, from a whiskey barrel, for example. Then they've been soaked in one of our stouts or something like that. And then they're like actually really interesting in themselves. So I'll take a bag of them home. So I have a smoker at home.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So I
See where this is going.
I use the spirals to as my smoking would.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite things to do is so you know we make Caribbean chocolate cake. One of the iterations of that was called mole. So it was like, had chilies in it and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I took the wooden spirals out of the spin bot once we'd made that beer. I took the chilies that had been in the spin bot with that beer. I took cans of that beer. I got a nice fresh brisket from the butcher, smoked the brisket with the spirals, and then put that brisket with the chilies that had been soaked in the beer and a tin of the beer and made a massive big chili with it. And it was like...
It's really incredible. Yeah.
Oh, it was the best chili I've ever had. And I was just... Every time I ate it, it was just like, I wish I'd made, like...
Yeah, gallons of...
Yeah. Yeah.
You've definitely made everyone very hungry who's listening to this.
Yeah. I hope people that listen to this at like...
You brought spirals, right? Haven't you?
Hoping they can just go home and eat dinner quick.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That's really cool. And that made me think, so you've recently done Siren's kind of maiden blending as well?
Oh, yeah. So, as we talk now, it was last week.
Yeah.
And I've only actually done it once before, because it's normally the week that they plan it in is normally the same day as my husband's birthday. So I kept missing it because I kept being off because we'd like go on holiday or something. But this year they put it a week earlier, so I was able to go. And it's just an experience like no other. The amount of really strong, like, it's barley wine, that you're drinking in the day, starting at 10:30 in the morning. It's just mad. But I tell you what got me this time was when we were comparing how does the beer smell to how does it taste. And as we went through different barrels of beer that had been matured for different amounts of time, there's some of the smells that you would get from it. So I remember one of them, I smelt it and I was just like, oh, it smells like chocolate. This is amazing. Like, this smells so good. And everyone else is smelling, oh yeah, chocolate. And the idea was like you would go through different samples of beer and write down which ones were your favourites. So I started writing down like, yeah, great, chocolate, brilliant, I want this in my blend kind of thing. But then when we tasted it, no chocolate, totally different.
Wow.
Yeah, but that happened quite often. You would smell it and get certain notes, especially if it was, you'd get like sort of notes of the barrel or of whatever liquor that had been in that barrel. But when you drank it, it was a totally different experience. And I think some of the barrels complement what the beer already tastes like and almost just bring those flavours out more. But some of the barrels, so for example for me, some of the tequila barrels made the beer taste so different to what its original state was that in one respect you thought, well, how is this going to work as a blend? It doesn't taste like Maiden. But those are the beers or blends, barrels that give each Maiden such a unique taste, because it might be that the Maiden comes from 6 different types of barrels, and the fact that you've got one in there that's got that slight tweak of an odd like tequila taste or something that really makes it zing or pop. So it was that was like really, really interesting. So
it's really cool. It's kind of like think of the grain bill that goes in.
Yeah.
You might have like 80%, I don't know, 70-80% is like just pale malt.
Yeah.
And you're not going to add in 90% of chocolate malt or anything like that, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
But if you didn't have that in certain beers, like it wouldn't be a London Pride, for instance.
Yeah, that's it. So, I know it's always a really interesting day, especially because you work in teams and you're all, like, the whole company gets involved.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like an away day.
Yeah, it is an away day at
a
work.
Working day.
Yeah. It's just... just an excuse to drink loads of barley wine.
Yeah. I'm guessing there's no brewing taking place on that day.
No brewing takes place on that
That's right,
day.
it's a nice day for everyone.
We do start a bit early and do some cellaring, but we don't brew. But yeah, so on my table, for example, there was me, there was the lady that works in the lab. We had some guests. There was like people from sales, marketing, finance. So everybody just gets kind of, and it's done on purpose. Every table or team is like that.
It's got a nice spread.
Yeah.
No group think happening there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you all sort of, I suppose, see the beer in a different way. And yeah, just to have that day where everybody mingles together, especially because, you know, teams change over the years and you might not have got a chance to speak to that person that works in a different department to you. So getting to know them and stuff, it's, I think, as much about the social aspect of Siren as a huge family team as it is about making this blend.
It's such a big thing though. So Maiden, just going back, it was the first beer that Siren ever brewed. And now you brew it every year, so it's a real tradition thing and something that is being built year on year on year, where you're able to take different blends and see what's happened in the barrels, what magic has taken place, and where you're going to go this year. And I guess you don't know until you do that blending session what this year's going to be like.
So no, you're exactly right. So it was the first beer that Siren ever brewed, which I think just it shows you what Siren are at their core. You know, they didn't sort of go, right, you know what, let's start with an IPA. They were like, no, we're going to smack in this like massive barley wine, and also we're going to store loads of it in barrels and not even sell
just straight from the off. Make a really big gamble in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
to go, right, we're going to, as a brewery starting out, we're going to be here in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years to sell it again.
That's it. Yeah. It's a massive gamble, but it was done on purpose to show, you know, we are here to take the risk that other people might not take and to strive forward in ways that other people might not. And that first beer was, you know, showed that. So now coming in, you know, partway through Siren's story and being able to work with the beers in barrels that, you know, the brewers at the beginning brewed is quite magical, to be honest. Because especially they do this Solero effect where they never empty a barrel.
Sort of pour in, pour out, isn't it? So you've constantly got some of the original, almost like a Mother Dough or a sourdough, that sort of thing.
So you know that each of those barrels has a little tiny bit of the original brew in it, which is special. So
lovely, you talked earlier about the being in a place where there were people younger than you, and then that being a new experience. And you talked as well about you sort of wanting to learn and develop. Have you also looked at learning and developing other people as well and helping pass on some of your wisdom over the years?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. So one of our brewery assistants just recently did his brewing certificate, and so I still had my notes from my certificate, and so you know, I was able to sort of lend him a hand and lend him the notes, and if he had questions, you know, take him through different things. So that was actually really, really nice to be in that position where you know, I don't know everything. No brewer does. But to know enough that you can instill that knowledge into somebody else is so rewarding. To make that loop is, in some ways, makes it even more worthwhile that you've done it, because you're opening up avenues for somebody else to then either follow in similar footsteps to you or go off and do their own thing, but, you know, with your sort of nudge. Yeah. So, yeah, it sort of feels similar to how other people nudged me along. Now I can nudge others along and, you know, encourage them and stuff. So
I think you're nudging people along, but from the sounds of what you're saying and the Brewers Congress, you're also opening the doors for people as well and helping to make it easier for people to come into brewing.
Yeah, I'm trying. I think I probably see differently to how people have traditionally seen brewing, and brewing has been done the same for centuries. It has always been a manual job. And for me, although I would not want to take away from that sense of the closeness to the ingredients and that manual side of it, because that's what's fun about brewing, I do think that in order to let more people into the industry and to open it up to people that aren't weightlifters, you need to move with the times in some respects. So for me, as I was getting into brewing, because I sort of came at it backwards, I was so far invested and into wanting to be a brewer by the time I got to the things that were difficult that I was just determined to overcome it anyway. So when I got to the point where I needed to somehow learn how to lift 25 kilo sacks over and over and over again, I found it really, really, really hard, but was like, I've got to get through this. I will not have gone through all of these years of what I've done so far and the education and the effort and everything that I've put into it to be knocked down by a 25 kilo sack. You know, like that, this will not happen. I will somehow get through this. And I had some like professional training in manual handling and that sort of thing. But I just think when you look at other industries that are similar to ours, so, you know, manufacturing of food, for example, it's a similar idea. But say if you go to a factory where they make bread, they need mass quantities of things like flour. There are not people wandering around with 25 kilo sacks of flour. They're not. That isn't
really
the thing.
not, no.
Yeah. They have come up with ways of automating those things so that those jobs are open to anybody. And again, it's not that I want to take away from the essence of brewing and being within the ingredients and really getting to know them. I just think that there's so many people out there, especially that what I've spoken to, that want to get into the industry, but either they're worried that they won't be able to physically do it, so just never apply, just don't get into it, or they get put off by the application process. So if you go away now and search for a brewer's role, I can guarantee you at least half of the jobs that you'll read, it will say on, must be able to lift 25 kilos consecutively. And a lot of people will just think, don't think I can do that, I won't apply. And it's like, there is so much passion and knowledge within these people, yet they are just brought down by this one phrase that says, well, because you're not a weightlifter, sorry, we don't want you. And it infuriates me. And I think if more breweries just didn't write that bit and just tried to see who applied for those roles, and if the person that comes to that role has everything that you want and is amazing, but for whatever reason is not going to be able to consecutively lift God knows what, work with that person to find a solution instead of just immediately saying, no, we don't want you. Because ultimately, if that person comes to your brewery and you find a solution, you haven't found a solution for that person, you found a solution for your whole brewery forever. So you're investing in your company as a whole and the future of the people that work there. So yeah, if I could change the industry in one way, it would be to remove physical barriers for people. Because I think we've made so much progress. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we've made a lot of progress in breaking down barriers as far as the language around brewing, and especially sort of how women and other minority people are seen within brewing. So if we could now get to a point where we also break down the barriers that physically stop people. Like, for me, I talk to so many women. I think there's a genuine belief that we need to encourage women into brewing, but we don't. They are out there. There are millions of them. So many women want to brew, love the idea of it, but get stuck at the point where they think, I won't be good enough, so...
Terrible place to be in for the sake of 25 kilogram bags.
That's it.
For some reason, an industry standard, and as you say, that's been overcome in other industries, not wholesale in brewing.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I heard you had an example of where you'd sort of come up with ways to kind of help move around 25 kilogram sacks of grain and all that.
Yeah, so this was actually in the pilot brewery at Fuller's. I'd struggled with the malt sacks when I was one of the brewing assistants, but because it wasn't always my job, I sort of just struggled through it each time it was my role, and then it's like, okay, phew, don't have to do that for a while.
Yeah.
But then when I was on the pilot kit, not only was it always going to be my job, and there was no silo, so all of it was going to be sack malt, and the mill was up some steps. I was just like, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is not safe. There is no way I can carry something that's at least half my size and, comparative to my weight, like over a third of my own weight, up some steps safely and not fall over or, So as small as that seemed as a problem compared to everything else, it was the one thing that I couldn't think how I was going to get around it on my own. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, the project engineer, he just could see things totally different to everybody else, and he just saw solutions for things. And so one day he came to him and he was like, right, this problem that you've got with the sack malt, explain it to me. And I was like, right. So you're like, okay. So if the sacks were to just sort of appear above the mill, would that be okay? Like, yeah, if they would just magically appear, fine. And then, so the next time we spoke, he said, yeah, I've got it. We're going to build you a winch.
Wow.
So I was like, cool, okay. So, yeah, and it was as simple as, it was just a steel bar that was screwed into the floor that then had an arm that went over the mill.
Yeah.
The winch came down to the floor. I just poked a hole in the bag, put the winch hook through the hole in the bag, then went up the steps, and I had a little button, so I just used to press the button, lift the bag up,
yeah.
And then it was all connected to a rope but rubber, and I'll just grab that, pull it along the rail to above the mill. Then
you didn't even have to swing it or anything like that. It was it would just move along the ceiling.
It wasn't a curtain type of that motion. And and then I just open the bag with my knife while it's still dangling there. All the malt goes into the mill.
Magic.
Easy peasy. Yeah.
That's it.
Just amazing. So that, I think once that problem had been solved there, and I saw that it could be done, that was then that catalyst of this can be done.
All of these things can be approached and overcome. I think it's that example of just having different viewpoints and minds to solve things, which again is why you want to encourage more people into brewing, because imagine the things that we can achieve.
Well, that's it, and I'm sure there are people out there that probably think, oh, well, that's all well and good in your airy-fairy dreamland where money's no problem and you can have whatever you like. And I understand that. I know that things cost money. But also, to me, your staff should be your biggest investment. And if you're not willing to invest in things that make the job doable more easily for your staff, and if you're willing to be a brewery that has a high staff turnover because they burn out, because it's too physically difficult, well, I think you're just losing out, because a high staff turnover never makes a great brewery. You never have the passion for the beer or the brand. So surely it's worth the investment in the things that make the job enjoyable and less physically difficult to do. You know, no brewer is ever going to go like, oh, I just want the whole thing to be completely automated. Well, maybe some brewers do, but I mean, you know, most brewers will always want to be involved with the ingredients, be able to touch it, feel it, smell it, eat it.
Get stuck in there.
Like,
there's ways of doing it, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, you can still be involved, but you take off the strain.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think here to all of that. So I'm going to now turn to the subject of beer and probably put you on the spot and ask you to name your favourite beers. But I'll let you pick from Fuller's and then from Siren. So what are your favourite beers?
From each of those.
And then maybe we can go to outside of those.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's 3 beers you've got.
So Fuller's beers, I would have to say 1845. And it's for 2 key reasons. One reason is because so I make the family Christmas cake every year with my grandma's old recipe book, and every year I eat some Christmas cake with 1845 because I just think the pairing is amazing, that those tastes just go together so well, especially on a cold day. You know, fire, really luscious Christmas cake, really luscious beer, amazing. But also because it's bottle conditioned, so I love to save them over the years and then go back and, how is that one tasting? Because sometimes you might taste an 1845 that's, say, 5 years old or so, and it's just transformed into something that you're just like, wow, this is amazing. And it's just because it's conditioned for that bit longer. So that's a super special beer for me. And then Siren is my favourite beer, is something completely different.
Now for something else.
Yeah. So it's a beer called Uncle Zester. You know it? Yeah. So it has loads and loads and loads of honey in it, and it's sort of somewhere between a sour and a slightly sweet sort of pale ale. I've never tasted a beer like it. It is so unique, and the first time I had it, I'd only managed to get the one tin because I'd only just started. And we recently remade it, and I was so excited. I actually brewed it, and I was I was like, oh my god, I get to brew it. This is amazing. And so much honey goes into it, and it was actually really cool because Sean, like the head brewer himself, actually like helped me get all of the honey into the kettle. It wasn't like, you know, oh no, I'm too far up the chain for that. It was like, everybody get involved, you know, let's all get this honey in here. So it's a super special brew, and I think it's one that brings everybody together because everybody loves it. And I was so excited to share it with people. I was just like, you know, going to like all my friends and family, try this beer. And I haven't found one person yet that's gone, no, I don't really get it, don't like it. Everybody's like, wow.
I think there's something for everyone in it. Like, it might not be what you're expecting to taste or anything like that, but yeah, it's a belter of a beer.
It is, it's amazing. So, yeah, that's my current favourite. Then My favourite beer is, annoyingly, a beer that I can't pronounce the name of. So, in my terrible English way of saying it, it's called Duchesse de Bourgogne. Well, I'm probably pronouncing it really, really badly. It's a Belgian beer, and it's a Flemish red.
Oh, nice.
So it's a sort of sour sweet type of taste. It was my first entry beer into that style, and I think the sort of vintage Rodenbachs have a very similar taste, but because Duchess was my first, almost like, you know, gateway drug type
It's
of
the one
thing.
that you remember.
It just holds that special place in my heart, and it's something that every time I go to Belgium, I go and get like the big bottles of it, and bring it home with me. It's the beer that people get me for Christmas and my birthday, and and I'll never be disappointed.
You can never have too many of those. I think. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I just think it's such a complex and yet simple. But I don't know how those two things go together. How can it be complex and simple at the same time? But it's the fact that it's never different. It's always how you're expecting it to be, just delicious, but the taste is so different as you first taste it as to when it's in your mouth, and then when you swallow it, and the smells, and I'm just in a whole different world. Just like
sort of into the territory of cheese at that point, isn't it? It's that sort of thing, isn't it? And it changes over time when it heats up and when your mouth's accustomed with it and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
So, fantastic beer. Very good. And how about your favourite place to enjoy a beer?
I don't necessarily have a favourite place to drink beer. I can only go off where do I have the most memories of enjoying drinking beer. And if it was that, I'd say Belgium. So me and my husband go to Belgium every year. We're going on Friday.
Excellent.
And it's something that we'll either do at Christmas, so we'll go to the Christmas markets, that kind of thing, or we will do when it's his birthday. So we we did once go in summer, but it was really hot. We almost always go in the winter, because it's just such a lovely place. And we will always try to go somewhere different and explore what are the breweries that are here, try and go on brewery tours, try all their different beers, find the local bottle shop, find the local beer nerd that can tell you about the beers that they've got, and then basically end up with far too many beers in the boot of the car and trying to hide them from customs and stuff.
That's a coat. It's your fermenter again with a ski jacket.
And we take them home with us, and we've got this whole beer unit in the garage where we keep all of these beers, and they come out for special occasions and stuff like that. And I think I just have so many happy memories. We got engaged in Belgium. Our first holiday abroad was Belgium. When we first met, the fact that we both liked going to Belgium and drinking Belgian beers was one of the things that bonded us together. So, although I don't have one specific place, I'd say that's where a lot of my happiest beery memories
Lovely.
are.
That's very nice. I'm afraid we're coming to the end of this at the moment, but where can people follow you and stay up to date with all things Hayley if they want to? So I'm on Twitter. So that is at Siren CB Hayley, so like Siren Craft Brew Hayley. I'm on Instagram, I think with the same handle. I think that's at Siren CB Hayley. We can check that out. I can pop in the show notes as well for that.
I think that's about it. I don't have any of the sort of super cool things. I don't have TikTok, or I don't know what those things are.
I do, but I feel really out of my depth.
It took me ages to get Instagram. I just had Twitter for ages, and often I end up with social media because somebody else has started like trying to tag me in photographs or something. You don't have an account. You know, there's photos of you on this thing. So then I end up with accounts. But yeah, you can find me there. Or, you know, come and visit the brewery.
Always the best thing to do,
Yeah. Come and have a few beers, get on a brewery tour, email us, come and visit.
Fantastic.
We like visitors, so...
It's normally on a Saturday, isn't it, for Siren?
Yeah, tours on a Saturday. But yeah, the tap yard's open most days. And you'll often find a brewer in there after their shift, so yeah, tap them up for some knowledge.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Huge thanks for joining us today on what's got to be a very big day now.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much.
No problem.
Cheers. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can join me on the next one. And this is the part where I ask for your help. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review or rating, or share it with others. This really helps us out and helps other people find the podcast, particularly as we're starting out. And you can follow us on social media. Search for We Are Beer People, all one word. You can also email us at wearebeerpeoplepod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Share your thoughts, and if you have any recommendations for beer people you'd like to hear from. And until next time, don't forget, you, me, us, them, we are all beer people.